The Wolf Who Stands Watch by Gillian Lee Jacobs, an Emberlight archive novella. For all those who get back up again. Chapter 1. 150 highly sensitive military design files, the shimmering hollow of a squat, balding man said. Whoever let that scoundrel in is going to die. Smoke curled around the head of Lara Burns. The bluish light from the hollow display in front of her cast shadows across her face, turning her into a ghoul. Fitting, she thought, ensconced in her darkened, cramped office. Can't have a kid stealing from the cream of our most esteemed defense contractor, can we? She said. No, we very well can't, the speaker said, not catching Burns's dry tone. A lot of money is at stake, more than you'll ever see in 10 lifetimes at your paltry job. You people deliver fast results, yes? Burns blew out a stream of smoke and set down her cigarette. The man's whiny voice set Burns's teeth on edge. She could care less about those fortunes, but she did like her job. You're okay with the fee? He glared. Of course. Though I don't understand why there is one. I pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. Your services are government services. They should be free. Burns smashed the smoldering end of her cigarette and watched it crumple. My hunters aren't free, Talvin, and my budget doesn't allow me to pay them myself. You have a problem with that? Take it to the Ways and Means Committee. The man stroked the few strands of hair clinging to his bald pate. If you don't catch whoever did this, a lot of people are going to lose their fortunes, not to mention the danger of these plans falling into the wrong hands. If it were up to me, this thief would be treated as a war criminal, an enemy of the state. For all we know, he's working with the rebels. Burns brought up a list of hunters while the CEO ranted. Kefne? No, he was too busy. She was dead. Malrin or Yadrain Thane. Can't do them. Too pricey for a job like this. Her finger rested on a new name. She tapped it thoughtfully. Torin Keth. The IPF police officer turned bounty hunter was more than capable of dealing with a thief, and he'd appreciate the pay. Yes, he would do. You want the hunter to recover the stolen data as well? She asked. The CEO glared at Burns. Of course. Why else did you think I'd call you? It will cost you double the fee. My office primarily brings in escaped criminals, usually after they've either been released on bail or convicted and imprisoned. We don't usually chase after stolen goods. I have acquired a special exception from the High Council, the CEO said The CEO said loftily. Indeed he had. Burns tried not to roll her eyes. So my hunter will catch the thief and recover the data chip. Yes. A light blinked on her display, the tracking chain. She tapped a key, bringing up a star map that zoomed in on a deceptively serene-looking blue and green planet swathed in clouds. The thief was on Aurelia. Burns hesitated, her eyes resting on the planet's name, Aurelia. Inwardly, Burns winced. Well, this new hunter sounded capable. Maybe he'd end up being one of the good ones. She sighed and started the contact form. How long will this take? Talvin snapped. Burns pulled out another cig and lit it. As long as it takes. I'll let you know when I have any new information. The ruined city of Cosil San on Aurelia wasn't dead. Like a corpse laid out on the forest floor, its body fed the wretched denizens that lived in its broken, crumbling bones and slithered through its rotting flesh. They crawled through it, fighting each other for scraps, desperate but unwilling to leave for uncertain, frightening paths outside the city. Even though the Confederacy had left Cosil San for dead, life teemed in its tissues. This rain-soaked night on the 12th floor of a decrepit old apartment complex that had seen more of rain and a rot than soap and sponge, a hacker named Skidder sat hunched over a data terminal far cleaner than the surrounding apartment. There was no bed, only a threadbare sofa and a single flattened pillow. A roach wandered unnoticed around the hacker's boots, skirting unidentifiable black stains on the carpet, collecting forgotten moldy crumbs. The only light in the apartment came from the terminal screen and a neon billboard shining weakly just outside the window. Several of its panels were cracked, and one flickered. Skidder bit his lip, staring at the screen. Data streamed down the screen. File numbers alongside encrypted names, a treasure trove of defense engineering from the sharpest minds of the Confederacy. If Skidder could crack even one of these design files, he'd never want for credits ever again in his life. Dorn would see to that. Just looking at the budget amounts listed beside the scrambled names made Skidder faint. Makes me sick thinking how much the government pisses away before lunch. Before lunch, you know? He turned to his girlfriend, V, beside him. While people like us scrabble around in the dirt our whole lives trying not to die, it's not fair. V's jaws hammered loudly as she chewed gum, smacking it against her teeth with a sucking sound. Her makeup was running from the rain, but she didn't seem to notice. Or perhaps she didn't care. It hollowed out her eye sockets, making her look ghoulish in the dim light of the stuttering sign outside. She tossed a round metal ball up in the air and caught it. Do you think you can crack those? She asked. Oh, yeah, Skitter said, with what he hoped was a nonchalant shrug. That's not going to be a problem. The truth was, it might be a problem. But with V's curled legs pressed up against his thigh and the way he could admire the curve of her backside in this position, he wasn't about to tell her that. She looked expectantly at him. Skitter tore his eyes away from her and got to work. It wasn't easy, and his mind kept wandering to the pressure against his leg. All he needed was one score. The screen flashed red. Skitter cursed. His fingers dashed over the keys, trying to silence the alarm. But it wasn't coming from Aurelia. It was coming from off-world. He glanced down at the stolen data chip, lodged in the side of the terminal. No transceiver on it. It couldn't be transmitting itself. It must be piggybacking off his own data signal, connecting him to the holonet. What is it? V asked, pulling herself up to a sitting position and leaning closer to the screen. Did you trigger an alarm? Yeah. He followed the code into the data chip itself and found it, a tracking chain code. Simple but effective, with Confederate fingerprints all over it. A little bile climbed to the back of his throat at the thought of all those wealthy defense tycoons so powerful they had government coders working for them. V grabbed Skitter's finger, bringing it to a halt, hovering over the delete key. V's hand rested on his, warm and firm. He looked up at her. What are you doing? He growled. If I don't stop this signal, they'll track us down. Throw us in jail. V gently pulled his hand away from the keyboard. Or we could find out who is on the other end of the signal. It's a filthy confed, Skitter spat, his voice cracking slightly. He shrugged her hand off and reached again to kill the signal, but she caught him again. But who? Why should I care? Because if it's a nobody in a basement somewhere, we have nothing to worry about. Someone up higher, then we have to worry. Then we worry. This isn't just a couple of creds you stole. You might have pissed off someone who won't stop looking just because the signal got cut off. So what do you want me to do? Can you trace the signal? Yeah. The more we know, the better. We can still get ahead of this. We should tell your father. We will, after we sort this ourselves. He'll reward us for our initiative. Skitter bit his lip, eyeing the button. It was a risk to leave the alarm on, but V had never led him astray yet. Her quick thinking had kept him alive this past year. Fine. V released his hand, and his fingers flew over the keys once more, this time with a different purpose. Seeking. Questing. Where was the signal coming from? Here, no. There, no, wait. There. An ID badge popped up on the screen. A middle-aged woman. Lara Burns, bail bondsman, Sector 12. Skitter suddenly felt as though the cold damp of the apartment had finally seeped into his bones. He shivered. I've heard of Burns, he said darkly. He tapped through a few more directories, eyes narrowing. If Burns was the one who received the alert, there was one more piece of information he needed. So have I, V said. Sends out the bounty hunters, right? Yeah. Skitter found what he was looking for and cursed again, this time softer. This alarm wasn't what triggered her. They notified Burns as soon as I left the facility. The job went out 3 days ago. He began to shake. The bounty hunter is probably almost here. So we deal with him. Not listening, Skitter stammered. V, I can't do that again. I can't. I can't go back. The first time I was caught by a cop. Cops have rules. Bounty hunters don't. Some people don't survive being caught by a bounty hunter. Memories of a uniformed policeman slamming him up against a wall, slapping electric cuffs on his wrists, sharing a cell with an inmate who used his fists to communicate. Skitter's fingers traced the ropey scar that circled his left eye. He squeezed his eyes shut. He shook harder. We'll be ready for him. We'll be ready for him. V's hand rested on the hacker's shoulder and gave him a soft squeeze as she peered at the screen. Skitter took a deep, steadying breath. Torin Keth. Heard of him? V shook her head. Everyone had heard of the big ones, obviously. Dax Verdakian, Adrian Thane. Malloran, and Royal Eben, names that made even the most hardened criminal pause. Skitter tapped through the hunter's bio. It held very little information. Oh, that's why we've never heard of him. I'm his first job, he said dryly. 1.8 meters tall, human male, origin unknown. V settled back and tossed the metal sphere up in the air again, catching it, unperturbed. A small, predatory smile curled her lips. Perfect. Skitter glared at her. He wiped his slick palms on his trousers. How can you be so calm? V looked at him, studying his face, her sharp eyes seeming to strip him down to nothing. Sometimes he felt like little more than a toy to her, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she held out the sphere in her hand and tapped a series into small circles etched around its surface. Light ran along seams that zigzagged and crisscrossed it, and then 6 legs popped out from its surface to let it stand on her hand. The little bot spun its single green eye towards the woman. V stood, unfolding her crossed legs and straightening her patched bomber jacket. She walked over to the window and opened it. The sound of rain against the street rose from a patter to a dull roar, punctuated by the crack of thunder. V pointed at a tiny dot of dim red light perched atop the roof opposite. The demo bot chirped. Then V tossed it out into the rain. The bot vanished from view as it dropped like a rock to the street below. Did you notice the assassin watching me for the past few hours? She asked, walking back over to Skitter, her hips swaying. What? On the roof opposite our buildings. He's been there half the night. Skitter turned to peer through the rainy darkness outside the window, but saw nothing. Who is he? One of Haffin's goons. You'd think Haffin would know better by now not to mess with Dorn's daughter. Skitter squinted through the darkness. That might be why he won't leave you alone. True. All right, how are we going to deal with this Torin Keth bounty hunter? She grinned slyly. Older than him by several years and wiser by far, V had lived down here in the scum-ridden warren of the downtown district far longer than Skitter. She knew how to survive. V returned to her place on the couch beside Skitter and pulled a case towards her. It dragged across the floor, catching slightly on the uneven surface. She flipped it open, revealing dozens more of the demobots, all in stasis. Tiny lights blinked slowly, on and off, their legs tucked tightly into their spherical bodies. I'll deal with him. I think I can handle one green bounty hunter. I've been dealing with men like him all my life. I've heard what bounty hunters do to people, Skitter stammered. Even green ones. They're different, V. They're not like Haffen. Haffen wants you dead, but he's careful about it, right? Can't be seen doing anything to you himself. I knew a guy who'd been caught by one of them. Bounty hunter blasted half his face off after he caught the guy. V swung her leg over Skitter's lap to straddle him, pulling him into a kiss that cut off his objections. Even the shaking stilled. His heart continued to pound, though for a different reason. Leave Torin Keth to me, V purred as she kissed his jaw. I'll deal with this greenhorn. And send a message to Burns, too. Don't mess with Skitter and V. With an eager smirk, the thief shoved the data terminal away and pressed V down under him into the fraying cushions. She giggled. Outside, across the street, a spider-like shadow scampered up the side of the building opposite them towards the dim red light. A moment later, the light and the attached shadow jolted with a yelp that pierced the rumble of thunder. The roof exploded in an expanding umber cloud of gas, fire, and debris. The blast rocked Skitter's crumbling apartment, shaking loose a brief shower of plaster from the cracked ceiling. Skitter and V paused for just a moment to brush plaster dust out of their hair and admire their view of the conflagration, then promptly ignored it in favor of the more interesting things going on between them.